Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is the New Faces and New Places episode, and I've got Vlad Sedler from FTN Fantasy joining us right now. Coming up, all on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, y'all. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeff Erickson here with Vlad Sedler, a.k.a. RotoGut, not RotoGoot, but RotoGut on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can check him out there. It is brought to you by Fantrax and Edge Boost. Vlad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. An absolute pleasure. There's nothing more I like to do at this time of year than to talk fantasy baseball, and to do it with you, doing it for so many years. I'm very appreciative of being here right now.
And the thing is, folks, keep your thoughts out for our buddy Scott Genstad. His house was not burned down in the Eaton fire, but affected. He's still not in his house. He'll be back with us eventually. But Vlad graciously agreed to join to kind of help us kick off RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Week. James Anderson has been carrying the load for us all offseason. Eric Halterman has as well. We thank both those guys, and catch up on those episodes if you haven't already. There's an awesome one with Phil Dussault. As a matter of fact, you guys should check out. But all of James's stuff is great. But we're going 5 days a week, 6 days a week even. I got Vlad tonight. We're going to do New Faces, New Places. Vlad, let's chop it up. Let's get right into it here. You know, it starts off, of course, with Juan Soto, the Juan Soto sweepstakes. Big news, the fact that he chose the Mets over other suitors, including the Yankees.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, it's not too far of a trip for him. I don't even know what his home plans are. Maybe he's staying where he's living. But moving back to the National League, is going to be there at the top of the lineup with Francisco Lindor. Mark Vantos there backing him up. Hopefully, a little bit of a breakout season for him. I guess you could say he broke out last year, but it's pretty much it's the same old thing with Juan Soto. You're getting a legitimate first rounder. You're getting somebody who maybe not hit the 40 plus home runs like he did last season, but you're just going to get a lot of everything else. I mean, nobody grabs a base quite like Juan Soto. And so really in that first round, it's just a matter of build and what you feel comfortable with, and if you're okay with not getting a whole bunch of steals right off the bat.
Yeah, and that's right. And, in the first round, you always have to make that decision. How important are those stolen bases going to be for you? He's going at 1.7 on average right now in the NFBC. And there's really kind of a top 7. He caps that off. I think there is a little bit of a gap between he and Kyle Tucker, who we're about to talk about. Maybe a little bit of gap between Gunnar Henderson at 6 and Soto at 7 too. What's your thoughts on? Would you prefer to get him in a 12 and a 15? Are you willing to take the plunge that high in him in the first round?
What's interesting is we all have our biases, and especially in the first round, guys that we lean to and against. And I mean, I'm crazy enough to say 25 plus drafts deep, and I do not have a lot of Soto. I'm usually making other decisions in that range, and I know I'll likely end up with a little bit of Soto, but the guys around him, I think the sort of more well-balanced stats that I would get in a Roto 5x5 from Kyle Tucker, I think I prefer a little bit more. But I think there will be some good deals on Juan Soto coming up in some of these RotoWire online championships. So I think we might even see, things get crazy. He can even fall out of the first round depending on what people want. So
really,
back end of the first round might be some good deals.
Yeah. So are you taking Corbin Carroll ahead of Soto? Are you taking who are you taking ahead of Soto at 7?
I do very much like Fernando Tatis Jr. and Corbin Carroll this year. I know the risk with Tatis, but he does seem to be fully healthy. My only concern there is just all the craziness going on there in San Diego and with that team. And so that's my only concern.
We'll talk about that in a bit here for sure. But I mean, it's bad with the Succession. It's the sequel to Succession, featuring the Sedler family there. Unfortunately, they've added 0 people this year. They've shedded people, but they haven't added at all, and it's frustrating to see because it was such a good story last year. Where they had their all-time attendance record. For them, they had multiple sellouts. they had this great season ticket base, and now they're fighting who's going to be the owner of the team. And because of that, they're not buying anybody this offseason. It's a shame because it's a great team. I know they haven't gotten over the hump, but it's a really good team.
Yeah, and obviously we know what we can get out of a healthy Fernando Tatis. I mean, it's potentially first overall. I mean, that's what's potential here. And then Corbin Carroll, of course, had the rough first half, like just completely shocking to us all. And of course, picked the pace back up in the second half. The end season numbers looked really good. And man, I just really like that offense there. Him leading off with Ketel Marte. You got Josh Naylor in the mix now, like I'm sure we'll talk about soon. I really like Corbin Carroll, a guy that can potentially get you 40 stolen bases and 25 homers and not kill you in batting average.
Yeah, exactly. Love him. All right, next big move. Talked about it, alluded to it a little bit. Kyle Tucker, bombshell trade. Not the biggest bombshell in sports. We had another one yesterday. We different podcast, but different sport. But Kyle Tucker, I was shocked at this deal getting traded to the Cubs. I don't understand why the Astros are shedding players like this. Kyle Tucker is awesome. Last year he had that strange mystery injury that kept him out much longer than people realized, but he's a stud. And he goes to the Cubs now.
He's just amazing as a fantasy player, a real life player. I think the one concern that people had was the sprint speed decreasing last year. Of course, the concern with the injury. But we'll see. There's always a little bit of an adjustment period with a new team, and especially in a new league. I mean, it's completely new to him. And of course, there was a little bit of suppression in Wrigley last year to left-handed power. But right now, I think even as of today, looking at my RotoWire news cycle, I see that as we assumed, Ian Happ will likely lead off there for the Cubs, and he's just been doing a bang-up job year after year. I finally came around to him. But like him with Kyle Tucker, Saya Suzuki, who is most likely going to DH full-time if they don't trade him, Michael Busch, Dansby Swanson, that's a nice little mix. It might take Tucker a little bit to get there, but I think at the end of the year, it's just going to be, these are his prime seasons right now.
My good buddy Joe Sheehan says he's high man on the Cubs. I'm kind of there with him. I'm annoyed about the Bellinger trade that they just shed salary and didn't try to get a player. But then they turned around and added another reliever. I don't know if Presley's their best reliever. We'll talk about that also a little bit later. But I think this is easily the best team in the division. Maybe not easily. The Brewers still exist, and they have Brewers magic. But the Cardinals aren't trying. The Reds, they kind of sort of tried. And the Pirates are just the Pirates. So I think the Cubs, I think they're pretty well set in the NL Central. Kind of thought that last year too, though. So we'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, and we'll see how things check out with the rotation. But they're even adding these little pieces there for rotational depth. Like maybe Colin Ray doesn't really move the needle much, but just like adding those kind of guys, a veteran presence like Ryan Presley. So it's a nice looking bullpen too. So they have about 4 guys I think that could potentially get saves, but it looks like it might be Presley to start at least.
Tucker or Soto for you?
I'm Kyle Tucker, and it's slight, right? It's also a matter of how you feel at the time and how you want to build. But push come to shove, it'd be Tucker for me.
Tucker or Tatis?
Tucker or Tatis. I have, for people out there, I feel like Kyle Tucker is going to be a little bit of a quote unquote safer pick. I am, I guess you could say, I know some people don't like this term, exposed, but I'm heavily exposed in my drafts with early Fernando Tatis shares. And so I would probably balance that out with some more of Tucker's. But again, push come to shove, give me Tatis.
I think it's hilarious that whatever jargon we use, someone will find a way to find fault with it. Whether it's shares or exposure or whatever. Like, just let us say what we're going to say without there. We have many leagues where we have drafted him. If we're having to kind of think about what we're going to say, it's just the whole plot has been lost. But anyways, sidebar aside, let's move on. Garrett Crochet, big breakout year. He was the elite of the guys that transferred from relief pitching to starting pitching last year, created a whole cottage industry. The White Sox traded him for 4 prospects. I don't mind the White Sox trade for this. He goes to Boston. How do we like him there?
I think a healthy Garrett Crochet, if you're getting 28, 30 starts, 32 starts from him, you're looking at a guy that can very easily be the number 1 overall pitcher. It's obviously a very tough division, but a healthy Garrett Crochet is elite. We saw everything, the swinging strike rate, just the absolute dominance, his stuff. It's phenomenal. I'm gonna do this a couple times on this podcast, but just kind of That was one of my big wins last year, just drafting a whole bunch of Crochet. But this was thinking that he was going to just be their closer at some point, so like January and stuff. And then lo and behold, I ended up landed on a guy that was an elite starter. But I am concerned about the health. That's a very interesting team. I mean, I feel like you can have a full podcast just on all the Red Sox reclamation projects, and he's not one of them. Obviously, it's more like the older guys, but it's a very interesting team. I wonder how it all blends together, and I think there are probably some moves still to be made there in Boston.
So who's the next Garrett Crochet? The reliever turned starter that it actually works out.
Well, who do we have? Because there were a few guys they wanted to. They were talking about Griffin Jackson. He's going to stay in, and who was it? Jeff Hoffman is most likely going to be closing.
Now he's closing for sure. Yeah.
But
I mean, it's only Clay Holmes is the only one I can think of off the top of my head that's really going to be that guy. I know there's others that we thought were going to be candidates for it there. Uncle Ted says Rasmussen, but I think he's going the opposite route. I think he's going to starting to back end, maybe even for the Rays. We'll see about that. But I think I know that Saris did a good article who would be good candidates for it. And I don't think too many of them are materializing so far.
Yeah, not as much as we thought, maybe going 2 months back, but the Mets starters in general, and again, also a little bit of a sidebar. I mean, they're kind of underrated as far as where you're getting some of these guys at ADP. Like after 300, at Frankie Montas, David Pederson, Clay Holmes around 300. I mean, this is a great park. I think defense will be all right, and so we hope. And Clay Holmes could be good. I think there's a little bit of a stigma with him, and just some of the issues, and lost his job, I guess you could say. But I think he will be just fine. He used to be a starter
in the minors. It's been 6 years though. I did check on that. He had 7 outings last year. Clay Holmes did, where he was asked to get more than 3 outs. So, or at least that he got more than 3 outs. Maybe he was asked a couple other times, but point is he's not like a huge multi-inning guy, but at the same time, I could see it. He said he wants to throw 160 innings. And I know we started off as this is a Crochet comment. We kind of morphed into Clay Holmes, but it's here. It's relevant. Are you taking Clay Holmes? Garrett Crochet at cost. Currently middle of the 3rd round in a 12-teamer. Average pick is 30.41 over the last 2 weeks.
I've been in some draft champions, the 50-round draft and holds, where he is going early 2nd round. So,
wow.
And we know how NFBC works. By the time we are getting to these main events, if he's looking good in camp, he's going to be, a back-end 1st rounder. So, the month or so ago was really the time to kind of get him, but a lot of sharp folks in these drafts are sort of pushing him up, and it is a little dangerous. It's a starting pitcher in the 2nd round.
I just finished a DC draft champions, which is a draft and hold format, with a couple of those sharp folks, you and Casey Cha. I signed up because I'm trying to get my reps in, and there's Vlad. There's Casey Cha. Great, awesome. At least I'm right now. I wasn't right next to you guys, but I missed out on many of my targets, and I learned other targets along the way, at least.
Listen, I love a competition, but when you run into Casey Cha and having to draft next to him in 3 straight DCs in a row,
3 in a row,
taxing.
Oh wow,
a little taxing.
Brutal. That I hate that, but good man. I like him. Great player, but rather see him elsewhere. But he's probably getting a lot of reps in himself, so good on him. Our podcast is brought to you by the good folks from Fantrax. It's the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Are you coming from another service? Fantrax makes it easy. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. Fantrax offers the most in-depth player pool in the industry, including minor league players. In fact, I'm in a huge Stratomatic league, 30 teams, and it gets every single player. It's awesome. I love it there. Do you need a customizable commissioner service for your fantasy league? Fantrax offers more customization than any other platform. Waivers, categories, scoring system, schedule. Fantrax offers custom solutions for all that and more, and it's all free. Sign up for free today and be entered to win an official MLB signed jersey from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. That's fantrax.com/rotowire. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. I've got Vlad Sedler here with me from FTN Fantasy. You can follow him on Twitter at RotoGut. Vlad, let's keep on rolling with these offseason moves because they were plentiful. Corbin Burnes kind of surprised everybody by signing with the Diamondbacks there. the whole backstory and how he ended up there was pretty interesting. Like, the Diamondback, like Scott, like his agent reached out to the owner of the Diamondbacks conveniently while the GM was in New Zealand and the assistant to the GM was in Germany, I think. And so a lot of the direct communication was going through the owner, which I always think is dangerous when you're signing a free agent.
No, absolutely. And we'll see. It's a nice fit. He has been the most consistent starting pitcher year over year over the last several seasons. Going back to the COVID year. I mean, he was elite. He was the 1-1 or the top 3 guy. And now you're getting like a third, in some cases, 4th round price on or availability on him. And he's just so consistent. And the thing that people are worried about is, the strikeouts.
I'm worried. I'll raise my hand on this one.
And he's even talked about it. Like, it's something he doesn't care. He's not looking to rack up fantasy stats and help us out in that regard. He just wants to, pitch his best stuff. And part of that is kind of a little bit more focused on the control. I think he will succeed in Arizona. I think he'll be a solid pick. Obviously, there'll be some tough matchups. They'll get banged up by the Dodgers here and there. They do have a very interesting schedule. They play a lot of AL East, so that'll be a nice little test. So kind of off the bat, they're going to play the Rays, Yankees, Orioles. So it'll be fun. But I do like Corbin Burnes.
Yeah. So just for edification, here are the rates that I'm concerned with. In 2000, starting back in 2020, which is the COVID year, so you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. But 37.6% K percentage, just ridiculous. 35.6 the following year. A big drop to 30.5 in 2022, 25.5 in 2023. Last year down to 23.1. Yet his average fastball was actually higher. It was at his all-time highest rate at 97.0. So it kind of lends credence to your suggestion that it's almost purposeful, like he doesn't mind putting balls in play. I just kind of worry that he was in a ballpark last year that really rewarded balls in play. They moved, it was Baltimore, the deep left field. That was a good place to pitch, especially if you're putting the ball in the air at all. In Arizona, it's not the hitter's park that people think it is, but it's also wasn't the death to fly balls either. It was a decent place to hit, not an incredible place to hit.
Yeah, and it's funny. So around the time that my projections were getting ready to come out, he was still a free agent, and I was just sort of playing around with the, if the park factor effect. So what would happen to my projections if he goes to San Francisco versus wherever? And San Francisco would have been so nice because the difference in ERA, granted, it's really not that big, but you're talking about a low 3s, perhaps, like in a normal Corbin Burnes season versus like a 3.5, perhaps. I mean, that's a huge difference in fantasy. Every inch matters.
100%. So you're getting him at a cheaper price. And, I'm doing this in order of ADP, in the last 2 weeks, 39.63. That's the start of round 4. Certainly a big haircut from previous years. And this is a 12-team league, by the way, that I'm kind of using that. If you want to make it a 15-teamer, then you probably have to push him up as well as other starters, just because 15-teamers, you kind of you value those starters a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's an area where there are some interesting pitchers. I mean, there are pitchers that, there are many of us who just won't touch Jacob deGrom, for example. Like I don't mind jumping in that pool.
I've seen
Chris
you
Sale
into that pool. I've seen your tweets.
There are Chris Sale concerns. There are Blake Snell concerns. There are a lot of concerns, and it feels like kind of in the.
Is he going to get traded and where to? Yeah, definitely. I get it. I absolutely get it. Closers. Emmanuel Clase is usually the first off the board. The second off the board, though, is Devin Williams, traded to the Yankees. This is not really a surprise that the Brewers traded their closer. They have a history of kind of doing that. What did you think about his landing spot?
I think if Devin Williams the back holds up and he's fine, I think it can be like a legendary season for him. He's just been so elite across the board for so many years. So, obviously wasn't fully healthy last year. And I think he will be just fine. Could rack up a lot of saves there. The ratios are going to be excellent. It's very hard to say, Devin Williams against the other guys. I think it's really personal preference looking at him versus Edwin Diaz or Josh Hader, some of those guys. Like the difference between all these guys who are a 2 ERA under 1 WHIP and 80 plus strikeouts. Really, the difference is the save ops. It's like, are you going to get 40 or 33? It's such a huge difference maker.
It is. It's a massive difference maker there. And it was that there was a good thread going on early drafts and the value of them there. If you kind of did an early draft, maybe you got Trevor McGill at a discount. Maybe you took Luke Weaver though and took a haircut, or as I took Lucas Ersig in our DC that we are together there. Like, oh, I should have, but that's not. I might get 15 saves. We'll see. We'll see about that. I'm not confident, but because I think it's a classic. Let the veteran guy get the saves, and you can deploy Ersig wherever, and maybe you get an extra win or two, but you lose out on all those sweet saves, which was what we're trying to do here. But it's an interesting gambit. It's what the Brewers do too. So I can't get it. I can't even get mad because they still keep on winning despite their little machinations there when they do that.
Yeah. And I know that some people have even mentioned that, I've been pretty vocal and confident that Trevor McGill is going to be their guy, and people pointing out, well, hey, they haven't named him. Nothing's official. And I'm looking at like, who really is else going to close there? Joel Payamps isn't, to me, a true closer. Brian Hoeing, Jared Hoeing, I think, and some other guys there. I mean, it really does seem like McGill. I mean, he's like pure closer stuff. So I really do hope, they're not bringing anyone like Kenley in. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Still out there. It's one of the, there's not too many huge difference makers, and we might talk about the moves that haven't happened yet, but Kenley's one of them there. He's one of those guys that he's only going to sign as a closer type. If he still has that leverage, but we'll see about that. I'm kind of cheating with the next one here. I'm going to lump all the Dodger moves together for the most part here. They're copious, and you're kind of steering into this evil empire thing, but starting with Blake Snell. I love Blake Snell to the Dodgers. I want to get more of them there. Roki Sasaki, who you got in our draft together, Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, Teoscar re-signs with the Dodgers. So that kind of counts too. Let's start off with Snell though. Do you like that? Do you like his landing spot? Do you like his cost?
I think the cost it's expensive for a guy who is only, I don't remember off the top of my head, but has only made more than 25 starts once since his big Cy Young season. So there's always the injury concern. I think the Dodgers will make him very comfortable, but we also know the history of starting pitchers with the Dodgers, and they're not going to be pushing these guys for 26 plus starts, and they're going to work with a 6-man rotation. But the starts you do get are going to be phenomenal. Like the guy that Blake Snell has been even the last couple of seasons, like it's like legit dominance. You're going to have a lot of, 1 earned run, 3 hits, 5 walks, and then 12 strikeouts. A lot of those type of outings. It's going to be really nice for the fantasy team. So I do like Blake Snell. Wish I had some more of them.
Yeah, I do too. Casey Cha took him 1 pick before you at 3.9 in our DC. I'm like, I thought I might get him a little later. No. That's it. It's going to keep going higher too. So that's one of those where I'm kind of watching that very carefully there. Sasaki though, you took him. I think the innings are everybody's concern. How many innings is he going to throw? You alluded to the 6-man rotation. You also, we also have his history, his youth. The fact that, there's these reports about, people worried about his medicals a little bit there, but I also understand the upside is SP1, in a good year. He may not get those innings this year, but they could be really good innings.
Yeah. I'm curious to see I haven't paid too close attention the last few weeks in the price, but he is basically the pitcher that I have the most exposure to in general. And that's grabbing a lot of him in.
How many have you done so far?
I have done 10 DCs, and I've done 18 Gladiators and an OC. And the Gladiators, obviously, they count, but they don't because we don't have to do anything with them. But I have just been drafting him, and I've been tweeting for people to draft him before he signed with the Dodgers, saying that he's probably going to sign with the Dodgers. Have I backed off a little bit in the last couple weeks because I have so much of him and because of these scares coming out with he considered Tommy John? Like, yes, I'm definitely scared. I remember having so much Raciel Iglesias the year that he started off the season hurt and missed the first 2 months. So I'm always a little sort of gun shy with this stuff, but yeah, I'm thinking 130, 140 innings of very, very low DeGrom, Scherzer in his prime type numbers.
Let me ask you this. You do a lot. You've done a ton of early drafts. I'm just blown away by how many you've already done. I know you are like part of a cohort that does do a lot of early drafts. But when you have so much exposure early, do you feel like that costs you, like in the main event, your most expensive, your most important drafts later on?
That's a good question. Something I struggle with every year, because at a certain point, the price changes and our opinions change and spring training changes things. I want to be, I guess, the same person I am in December, but just more knowledgeable when it comes around to it in March. But also, you and I and many others, we were kind of like, pardon the phrase, but it's like open kimono. Like people know kind of players we like, we're recommending, and then it's, there's another level of battle.
Love the Mad Men reference, by the way. Well done.
But would I, am I going to be disappointed if the guys that I really like, I end up with none of them in, the main event season? Maybe that works out that way. But these guys, the prices get higher and things change, and it's a large player pool. There are just so many players we're like, a lot of ways to go.
Yeah. And I've often thought about that too, because there are times when I've got so much of them, and I don't even do the number of drafts you did. I did 0 gladiators this year. I hate the gladiator contest. I love that they do it. I don't feel like I do well in it. Especially because I work football, and I just can't do that right. And they fill out pretty quickly anyhow. So I just don't do them. Maybe that's a hole in my game. Maybe I should do it so I could get more associated with the player pool quicker. But I feel like that's a different player pool too, because there are no moves whatsoever. You have 0 tolerance for mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, there's no healthy lineups. You look at the teams that won winning the contest in the top 10 overall, and everybody has injured players. It's a contest of attrition. I just did happen to start earlier than I ever had before. I usually will have a few weeks break because I was able to kind of work out to, once fab football season ended, I could just kind of concentrate on baseball. And then you know how it is. It's like a Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. You start doing rankings and you do one gladiator, and it's like,
let's just open up another draft. Why not? Yeah, exactly. I hear you there. Good. All right. The relievers on the Dodgers here: Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates. All of a sudden, Kopech shows up with a forearm issue. He's going to be ready. Blake Trinan, they re-signed Blake Trinan early, and I'm like, oh crap, I missed my window in getting cheap Blake Trinans. And then they added 2 more relievers on top of that. It's a sick bullpen.
What if I told you, and you may not believe this, I have a gladiator with each of those guys. Those are my closers, because I was convinced Scott was signing in, Toronto, Boston. I mean, anywhere but the Dodgers. And then Yates too. It's killer. But listen, that's part of the territory. It's what happens when you draft in early. But it's been especially tilting with the closers, because you kind of see the open holes. You're like, oh, the Rangers need a closer, the Blue Jays need or whoever, and it's not fitting the way it is. It's just like, yes, I'm annoyed at the Dodgers, at my team. Like, I'd rather, for fantasy sake, like things even out, as opposed to having all these guys in one place. And anyone that thinks they know who's going to be the leader in saves in that team, like, sure, it could be Tanner Scott, or it could be Yates, or it could be Trinan. Why should Dave Roberts even anoint one guy? It doesn't even sound like he's going to.
Evan Phillips still exists and is a good pitcher too. It's like crazy. Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, I really thought there for a while that Blake Trinan was going to be the guy, of course, before they signed Yates and Scott. And I mean, now he's, to me, looking like third in that pecking order. But
yeah. And you can blame Kopech's injury. I don't think they signed Yates without Kopech getting hurt, having the bad medical there. And I think that's probably it. And I think there's other teams out there, like the Cubs, are like, oh, we can wait, because the Dodgers are done. Okay, they signed Tanner Scott. We got out, but fine, we'll go sign Yates. Oh, or not. The Dodgers are like, we're not going to settle for a lesser guy to fill in. We're just going to go take the best reliever out there. They're steering into the whole evil empire thing. And I think baseball is still better for it there. Others may disagree about that, but hey, big markets should behave like big markets. And I hate it when the Cubs and the Yankees are crying poor and saying, oh, we can't compete with the Dodgers. Come on, you're in Chicago and New York. You have over $500 million in revenue. What are we complaining about here?
Yeah, the Steinbrenner quote was definitely pretty funny.
Yeah, absolutely ludicrous there. And Yates is like 38. I understand he's in it's a 1-year deal, but it makes sense for the Dodgers. They don't care about the money part. They just need that next guy in line. So hey, they're doing that. Teoscar, I know you and I and Scott all have a love for Teoscar. Goes back to the Dodgers. More of the same, or was this kind of a career year?
Being in a position where you're in the middle of that lineup, it's just hard not to sort of drive batters in your sleep, because there's always going to be someone on base for you. You still got power. You're kind of just you're just feeling it, right? So sure, there could be some variance, some outliers. Maybe he hits a career low average or something like that, but it's never going to get worse than it was for him in Seattle. He's in a really good position, but again, it's just a matter of build and what you're looking for at that point. But he's pretty solid overall, and you're just getting a little bit of a bump with the counting cats with runs and RBI there with having somebody like that on your team.
Indeed. All right, let's stay in the division. Talk a little Giants. The Giants finally got someone to take their money. Willy Adames signed for a pretty hefty deal there. Later on, they signed Justin Verlander on a 1 year make good deal. He and Max Scherzer both have to settle for 1 year deals. Let's talk Willy Adames first, though. Career year. This strikes me as the career year guy you probably don't want to pay full cost for. He never really ran like he did last year. He's going to a terrible ballpark to hit in with a much worse lineup around him. I'm wary of him at this price.
Yeah, he's been in my rankings like a couple rounds below where he's been, and he's been falling since. It just makes too much sense. And even when you plug in your values and ours, and you get your sort of 5x5 roto value, it's like in a couple tiers below, really. And that's even giving a little bit benefit of the doubt. Like, he is going to score a bunch of runs. He's still going to hit some home runs. The average is really kind of the difficult part of it. But what I do know, he's locked into that 2-hole. I think from what I read, they're not certain of how they're going to mix it up. I think everyone assumes Jung-Hoo Lee was going to be leadoff, but there have been some whispers about him potentially hitting third. Maybe Lamont Wade doing some leadoff against righties. You still got Matt Chapman there. Helio Ramos had a nice breakout season. So I know the ballpark stinks, of course, but I like it. And I think in Verlander being there is really, I think it's good for that pitching staff that has a lot of young guys, very talented guys, and just him being there is solid. I actually think, just total crazy out there, but I think Verlander will have one kind of like nice final hurrah with like an ERA slightly under 4 in about 20 starts.
Okay, I can see it. I like him. I like that. I kind of like Robbie Ray this year. I even like Hayden Birdsong. I know there's a lot of risk with the walks with him, but man, it's hard to find guys that miss bats like that.
Yes, and 300, 400 ADP. It's great.
If it doesn't work, we move on. And he's Keaton win, and we move on to the next one there. And another one, but that's okay. All right, let's talk a little about the Blue Jays, who also another team finally got somebody to take their money. Anthony Santander, Max Scherzer. They even got traded for Andres Gimenez as well. Did they do enough?
I still heard some Bregman whispers, and perhaps we'll talk about that later. But I think
check them off now, even if you want, but that's fine.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think George Springer having a little bit more and just kind of staying healthy all season, and Bo Bichette figuring out whatever. He's got a lot of things going on, and hopefully things just settle in for him, because he's always been such a good real life hitter. And I feel like he's just got a lot of crap, right? Because he doesn't run, sprint speed last year, issues just completely. There are some people who are just completely off the Bo Bichette train. I think there's a potential value there. But I like the Anthony Santander signing. I was, before I joined you, I'm writing up corner infielder tiers, and it kind of hit me like, whoa, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to get some amazing protection from Anthony Santander. Is probably going to hit behind him in the lineup. Guerrero hit 323 last season with 100 RBI with like nobody around him. So, there's some things to like there in Toronto. And yeah, I like those things, but and Santander is also one of the easier guys to project, I think, too. You kind of know where he's going to land home run wise, and 30s. The average isn't going to be amazing. But he could drive in a lot of runs there with Bichette and Guerrero on base if that's how they work out the plan.
Yeah, I think they need to add one more bat, and they have multiple paths to doing so. It could be Bregman, it could be Pete Alonso, and you move Vlad to third. That's been rumored a lot. You could trade for Nolan Arenado also, which is a thing that we'll be also talking about later there too. Any one of those things would be it just gives them one more better guy in the pecking order, because like Ernie Clement, he's fine, but he's not really an everyday player. I feel the same about Will Wagner. I mean, even Dalton Varsho has great defense, but he was really disappointing last year offensively. And they need Springer to have some sort of dead cat bounce, I feel like. Same with Alejandro Kirk. I mean, that's the thing. You have so many guys that are coming off of disappointing years. You need one of them at least to bounce back, and then you need one more bat, in my opinion.
They're, looking at it a month ago, and you're like, wow, these guys are really just tanking. You're going to have Joey Loperfido and Will Wagner and Nathan Lukes in your starting lineup. Like, this is brutal. But you add Santander. If you have a couple of those guys healthy, you add, somebody like a Bregman or someone else. There are still a couple of guys out there. And then maybe you're competitive. I mean, the pitching staff, I think, is solid.
I agree.
Got Hoffman. There's some good things there in Toronto.
Yeah, I think they upgraded at closer. And at least in terms of I think if you look back, I mean, I don't think necessarily Hoffman versus a healthy Romano is better, but I don't think we're going to see a healthy Romano. I think that's a creature that doesn't necessarily exist. So we'll see about that, but I like their starting rotation. I'm not super high on Gossman, but I don't think they need him to be a stud necessarily. Like, I like Bowden Francis. I like Yariel Rodriguez a little bit too, as guys that can contribute some. So I think they're 6 deep, which is always handy.
Yeah. I like that staff.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the Astros. We keep on shuffling all these first basemen. Christian Walker goes to the Astros. The Astros didn't completely shed. They did improve at a place that was an utter black hole for them last year at first base. I like Walker going to this team.
I love Christian Walker on this team. It just, I know it's not Walker Texas Ranger, it's Walker Houston Astro, but it's just, almost meant to be. Yeah. And you're going to have Yordan Alvarez ahead of you in the lineup. And when he's not, moonshotting, he's on base. And, it's just going to be RBI opportunities alone. It just kind of feels like he's been one of the most, he's like an underrated star in the league. But he's just always producing. He's got power. Barrel rate's always high. I think he had some career marks on the StatCast side of things. And he's just really solid. I like Christian Walker a lot, but he's part of that glut of corner infielders where there's a lot of value. Him and Naylor and Bellinger, Caminero, they're, all these guys. Just kind of pick your favorite.
Yep. It's funny you say that because Naylor's next on my list. Going to the Diamondbacks, had a career year in Cleveland, where I think the park affects the change of it changed the wind currents, that it blew out to right field a lot better last year, even though the fences didn't move, the seating was changed, and that was enough to kind of give him a little bit of a power boost. But I like him in Arizona. I thought that was a pretty good ad by Arizona.
All Josh Naylor does is just drive players in. Like, if you remember his crazy, what was it, the 2023 season where he had only played 90 games, but was among the RBI leaders. And then he did it again last year in Cleveland. Obviously, doesn't hurt to have Jose Ramirez, in front of you in the lineup. But now it's Corbin Carroll and Kettle Marte. I mean, that's pretty good. So I don't know where he's going to land as far as, batting average is concerned, but the power, not a big barrel rate guy, not a big, you look at it as, StatCast number, 89 mile per hour exit velocity, 8% barrel rate, nothing sexy. And it kind of keeps people away from him, but he's always producing runs, and he's probably going to do that again this year.
Yeah. Arizona's weird because they lost Walker. They also lost Jock Peterson, and believe it or not, losing Jock Peterson kind of hurts. They had this really awesome DH platoon, between Peterson and Lourdes Gurriel and Gurriel played some left field obviously too, but they had this lefty righty perfect platoon at DH, and Peterson was just raking against righties, never hit lefties at all, but they didn't need him to. And Arizona had this scary good offense because of that.
They led the league in runs last season, and no one could have predicted it. It was like a 20% bump from the previous season. It was crazy. And you look at the roster now, and the top half looks great. We'll see how Jordan Lawler comes around. They say he's probably going to start the year in the minors. We'll see. I'm hoping it's a good year for him. But are they really going to be playing a lot of Pavin Smith? Is Jake McCarthy a full timer? Will Alec Thomas kind of finally be healthy and step in? And then they actually just I think they brought in Garrett Hampson to a minor league deal. So he what is it? Who's not dead may not die, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I forget the idiom as well. I think those that you kill do not die. I don't even, we're going to move on because I'm bad at idioms and I don't want to butcher it any worse than I already have. But yeah, I think this is it's still a good lineup there. And they didn't get like their A+ performances from all their players. Suarez had a terrible first half. Carroll had a terrible first half. Of course, both had amazing second half. So it kind of trades off. Gabriel Moreno still, I think, has another level left in him. He hasn't quite hit. As you mentioned, Lawler, they got nothing from Lawler last year. He's still someone that I too share some optimism for. I think Perdomo is just a nice little placeholder, but I think you'll see Lawler by the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a fun that's going to be a really fun division, and Arizona can make the playoffs.
Yeah, minus the paste-eating Rockies, another team that's done nothing this offseason there. And I was able to get my paste-eating reference in there. So it's another good podcast. It's a good day when I can make that reference. So I got that going for me. We are also brought to you by the good folks from Edge Boost. And so we're going to share a little note from them. Have you ever had your debit card decline or had to call your bank at 3 a.m. in Vegas? Edge Boost is the first consumer-facing online bank dedicated to the gaming industry. There are numerous benefits to using Edge Boost. $250,000 per day in debit deposits, unlimited withdrawals, cash back on sports betting, DFS, sweeps, 100% approval for all gaming activity, financial segmentation for discretion and responsible gaming, compatible today for prediction markets, iCasino, DFS, sports betting, lottery, brick and mortar casinos, horse racing, and sweeps. No transaction reviews or account freezes. Visit edgeboost.bet today and use promo code ROTOPOD. That's promo code ROTOPOD. Thanks to Edge Boost for their sponsorship of this great podcast, or at least of our podcast. I don't know if it's great. I'm overspeaking the case there. But anyways, I do have a great guest. He is Vlad Sedler. I'm not overspeaking that case here a little bit there. Vlad, there's so many more moves. I'll try to rip through these a little bit faster. Cody Bellinger traded to the Yankees for nothing. Max Fried signs after they don't get Juan Soto. Paul Goldschmidt signs with the Yankees. Your reaction to these moves?
Some of it, when we do this for so long, for so many years, and also draft so much and are so in tune, you get vibes, and part of it you kind of go off vibes. There's a lot of good vibes to me with this Yankees offense. I don't know. I don't have a full feel on the pitching staff. Like, I don't know how confident. I've always been a Max Fried guy. I don't know exactly. I don't have a strong feel how things will go for him in New York. I do think he'll probably, if he stays healthy, he's a guy that could lead the American League in wins. But you're not expecting maybe the same ratios. It's going to be a little tougher for him out there. But the offense
does a lot of work there too in staying healthy, right? As we've seen with his forearm strains in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so the pitching staff, I'm not sure about. The hitting, I feel very confident. If you just you click in, the RotoWire projected lineups, or Roto over on Roster Resource, wherever you go, and you can just stare at that and just salivate for hours, like how incredible this offense is. And there really is something to be said about when you just get a collection of amazing talent, how all these things that affect them in their lives, or like on the field, they just kind of disappear when an offense is gelling. And so there's an opportunity for it sort of just to meld together and just all go well. Of course, could also go poorly, but like Cody Bellinger with the Yankees, and with how he is kind of improved his game in many aspects, and still a low strikeouts guy. I kind of like Cody Bellinger there. And again, the issue is just all the players, all those corner infielders in that range.
Yeah. So with the Yankees, I think there's a couple of concern points, second/third, wherever they don't play Jazz, can DJ LeMahieu be a full-time player? And if not, when he is not, do they have somebody else that can step in? I think that's it's like year 3 of this is ongoing, that they still don't have an adequate replacement for him. It's Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza. I still can't tell the two apart. I refuse to try to do so.
Yeah. It's like who ends with an O? Who's the Oswald and the Oswaldo? I always forget that.
They're really kind of counting on Jason Dominguez. This is, the training wheels are off. They don't really have an adequate replacement for us. It's Cabrera again, or Everson Pereira. Trent Grisham exists, but they let Verdugo go. It's not a huge loss. He was really pretty bad over the second half. How many games does Stanton play? Can Goldschmidt have a dead cat bounce? I mean, there's still some kind of concerns there, but you're right. There's a huge ceiling there waiting. It just requires a couple of these things to be answered positively.
Yeah, what's funny is there were before Jorge Polanco signed with Seattle, there were some rumors of the Yankees or the Astros potentially going grabbing him, and so that would have been an opportunity for if Jazz would play third base, Polanco could play second, but it looks like Polanco's going to play third for Seattle. But yeah, it's just interesting. They really need to figure that out because the Oswaldos aren't going to cover it.
Yep. Let's move on to the Texas Rangers. This is one of those teams that is really trying to strive to avoid paying the luxury tax this year. And so they've missed out on Kirby Yates, for instance, there. They could have used him and they just couldn't have matched what the Dodgers were doing. Fine. I get it, but it kind of sucks for them. They traded away Nathaniel Lowe. They traded for Jake Berger, kind of a 1-for-1 switch. They also signed Jock Pederson. I like that. We talked about Pederson with the Diamondbacks. I kind of like him with the Rangers. They need a healthy Corey Seager. They need a healthy Josh Young. They kind of need Evan Carter to do something. There's a lot of they need the things that went wrong last year to go at least decently this year.
This is the ultimate power lineup, and the strikeouts aren't as bad as we think. So yes, there are a couple of guys that are going to have a 30+% strikeout rate, but surprisingly, you might think that Jake Berger is a big strikeouts guy. He really isn't. He's I think somewhere in the 25% range, but I don't think any team has ever had a full starting lineup where everybody's hit 20 home runs, but this lineup is definitely capable. You look at every one of these names, either have done it before or extrapolate to a full season could do it. And this is even going down to Jock Pederson's potential platoon partner, Kyle Higashioka. So it's interesting. A lot of home runs here.
Yeah, and Higashioka could end up winning the starting catching job for the Rangers too. That's still possible. I think Heim's a decent last year's bum, but he's not guaranteed to hold that job. I mean, Higashioka can take over some time there. Are you willing to pay the price for Wyatt Langford? Other than having an awesome name like Wyatt, and we can kind of do our Ozark thing there, but year two, he was starting to come on second half of the season. First half wasn't great. Obviously, he was hurt some too. Average pick in the last 2 weeks is 41, which puts him at 4.3 in a 12-teamer. Are you paying that price?
I have. I think the couple Wyatt Langford shares that I got were a little bit more reasonable. And it's just it's about build. And it's also where you are in the draft, because at certain points in the draft, if you're on one side of it, you just kind of have no chance. He's not even going to come around to you to even consider. And then it's also a matter of how you started. But if you've started with a top pitcher like a Skubal or Paul Skeens, I think Langford kind of works into a nice build there if you can grab him in the third round. I think he's probably be more fun for a 12-team setup, but I think so much relies on as crazy as it sounds, the health of Corey Seager and Adolis Garcia around him in the lineup to really for him to be able to achieve that full.
Yeah. I think you're going to see a year 1 to year 2 bump in everything that he was lacking. I understand he was terrible early on. I just think though, remember he had so little professional experience, so few minor league at bats that of course he was going to struggle at the big league level. I think year 2 it's going to be a little bit better. Maybe it's wish casting. I acknowledge that there is some risk there with that price, but I want to get at least a couple of shares of them in my leagues. Shares there. I said it there, but all right. Let's move on. Late closers. There were a number of late changes in the closer market. Carlos Estevez signs with the Royals. Brian Presley gets traded to the Cubs. Jeff Hoffman signs with the Jays. Shook up a lot of drafts. First of all, of those three, Estevez, Presley, Hoffman, who do you like the most?
Estevez, Presley, and Hoffman. I like Ryan Presley the least. In fact, I know he'll start off closing, but I think he was even a little shaky last season. I think he half his season was just really not good, and he's always has health concerns. So he's the third of that group. I think Jeff Hoffman could be just fantastic. I've just read so much about him, really kind of following him closely. So I'm a big fan. And Estevez is a kind of born to be a closer kind of guy, but his skills, he's not as good of a pitcher as Jeff Hoffman is. And so I actually think Lucas Ergaseg is a better pitcher than Carlos Estevez, and we'll grab some saves opportunities as well. But if like just everything sort of goes smoothly, it just, you just kind of have your hired gun, Estevez, just, getting those last couple outs in the ninth inning. So sucks for my teams with Estevez and Urseg, but here we are.
Yeah. Let alone any Chad Green owners out there or Yimi Garcia owners out there. You lost stock. I agree. I love Hoffman. The thing that caught my eye is that they firmly said he will close too. It wasn't like they were wishy-washy. They were saying he will close. So I gave him a pretty good projection after that in terms of saves. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say he's got escalators in his, like clauses in his contracts for like 60 innings, 70, 80. So he might be like one of those super closers, like coming in and getting you those extra innings. I mean, he could be great.
I feel like he is this year's Robert Suarez, where we're going to have to pay a pretty hefty price by the time we get around to the main event. If you're drafting now, you might get some discounted rates still, but that's going to be one of those guys where he's going to go top 100 players eventually.
Oh, guess who in our DC picked him up about 2 hours before he signed with Toronto at 250.
Yeah,
Casey Shaw.
Of course he did. Yeah. And the thing is, he was there available for all of us there, and that's shame on us for not getting him. Let's move on to Yusei. You only hear what you want to. Kikuchi signing with the Angels. The Angels were busy early on in free agent season, trades and signings. Do you like Kikuchi with the Angels? After the Astros kind of did some tweaks and made him pretty awesome, does he continue doing that with the Angels?
The interesting thing is he's one of the guys that the players that you aren't as into, you need to sort of look into them more and check your biases at the door, because I've been an anti Kikuchi guy, and I feel like I've survived, and I think I probably will continue to survive this year without him. I do think he'll have a lot of good starts. I just think it's funny. The sort of joke around the league is how he was signed is because he dominated the Angels in 2 starts towards the end of last season. Yeah, and it was
always a sign of a good organization that does that, right?
Yeah, Artie's like, oh, get that guy, whatever he costs.
Yeah, I get that vibe from them all the time. Sometimes you see reporters dutifully report, well, against the Reds, they did this. Yes, yes, I cited my Reds as far as that goes. Speaking of my Reds, they also moved early, traded away Jonathan India to the Royals for Brady Singer. They did a couple of other small stuff because they only can sweat the small stuff. The big stuff is just out of their league. Austin Hayes, that's a good signing. I know you lamented not getting him, I think, in our DC, or maybe you got him and someone else lamented not getting him. I forget which the order was there, but he signs. They went out and they traded for Trevor Rogers. It's always like the B, C plus market that's where they're shopping.
Yes, but I like the makeup. I feel like what we're going to get this year is something in between the surprising breakout season of 2 years ago. I didn't call it season breakout, but they were really good 2 years ago, and it was a surprise. And then last year was completely deflating. I like the way this lineup is shaping up. I think getting Mac McClain back is huge. Another year of Ellie. He's only 23. You get a healthy TJ Friedel. Candelario still got a little bit left in the tank. I don't mind it. I mean, pitching staff's a different thing. Want some health over there, but the ballpark's great and the offense is solid.
It is. It is solid. Especially if everybody stays healthy. They actually have some redundancy this year. I think we won't be talking about how they have too many bats after last year, though. That's for sure. The Braves.
Can I ask you real quick, if you don't mind? I want to know how you feel about Christian Encarnacion Strand this season.
He and Marte are both a mystery to me. I think Marte is kind of the odd man out for now, but man, he's a top 10 prospect. These guys don't forget how to play ball. The only thing I can think of is unless he did it all by cheating, and that he finally got caught for the first time. That's the only thing I can think of, but I think it was because he was trying to rehab an injury in Dominican after suffering an injury in winter ball, and that's how he got caught. Now, he could have been cheating before and just evaded capture, so we'll see about that. CES, he was pressing early on. He was squeezing that bat so hard, trying so hard early. I think he went 0 for his first 10 with like 7 strikeouts, and then homered on the last at bat of the first homestand. I'm like, okay, we're good, we're fine, and he wasn't fine. And then he had the injury that was so massively misdiagnosed. I think he's going to get a full shot again this year, and I think the price is right on him, although it's creeping up too a little bit. But all these Reds are getting a little cheaper. McLean's still a little cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And Marte's free, basically, because he might start the year in the minors. Because of the Gavin Lux trade, because they're moving pieces around. The Candelario signing is still it reeks, because they'll probably keep him up because of his contract. But that might only be a short-term thing too. That eventually something's going to have to give, unless he's got to start to hit right away. But you can get Marte. I in a keeper dynasty format, I would trade for both CES and Marte. This year might be a tougher call. But then again, as Chris Liss always says, buy lowest, not just buy low, but buy lowest. These guys are at lowest right now.
I mean, I've never seen someone fall off like Noelvi Marte in drafts. It's just it's wild. Like, nobody wants him. It's just
Well, the quote, and that story that came out, which was it wasn't really having direct quotes. It was more Gordon Whitmire's summation that, hey, he's the odd man out. That might not play out that way. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of fun. The Braves did nothing for a long time. They finally brought in Erickson Profar, though, off of a kind of a career year. He replaces Jorge Soler, who they traded away, just shed the contract. They didn't even keep the player they traded for, in Griffin Canning. I actually wanted to get a little Griffin Canning on the Braves, and then he got just jettisoned. But what do you make of Profar after his big breakout year? Is this a trap, or is the Braves a good landing spot?
I think it depends on where the price falls. I haven't seen him. I've seen him move up in the best ball contests, but in obviously he's moved up a little bit here as well since he signed. But he still kind of feels like a good deal, because I'm always looking at the players on these offenses, like the Atlanta Braves, who had such a bad season, and Acuna hurt, and Olsen down year. Austin Riley was out for a bunch of it, and they had a 20% reduction in overall runs, and they had been a top 3 run producing offense for so many years. And I just feel like a lot of bounce back seasons coming out, or like finally the big Michael Harris, breakout year. But while Acuna's out for that first month, if you have Profar hitting in the top third of the lineup and you're hitting ahead of Riley and Matt Olson and Ozuna, it's just kind of hard to imagine him not succeeding and getting profit.
What are you doing with Acuna and Strider, by the way?
I have been trying to not draft Acuna, and then, of course, because I'm a human being, you see one clip of him hitting baseballs, and you're like, maybe I should get some Acuna. Yes. But since Spencer Strider, I feel like I think it depends on the format or where I'm drafting. But like NFBC in a draft champions, where I know I have a good feel for starting pitchers late, I can get some deals later. Let me throw in a Strider there if he's like at 150 overall in the 10th round, and I can work with that. It's going to be harder, come drafts, especially because we don't know what the true story is. Like, he's going to be on the roster, but not full go, or a full go, but not on the roster to start. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either how that one's going to play out, but and that's the whole point. I mean, I think in 3 weeks we'll have a better idea. When pitchers and catchers report, when injured players report, all of a sudden we'll get some timelines. But I've been kind of avoiding Acuna and Strider. It just, you come in with the pre-injury, and it's the second one for Acuna. It's the second one for Strider. That is one of the things that works against us there a little bit. We're going to talk about the moves that haven't happened yet. But first, we're going to get a quick note from our friends at the Blue Wire Network. And if you're streaming live with us, you got to avoid that. But thanks to the Blue Wire Network for sponsoring us, as always. I titled this the moves that haven't happened yet, but the moves that mostly haven't happened yet, because today Jack Flaherty signed with the Tigers, a 2-year, $35 million deal. I think there's a lot of opt-outs for the Tigers. I think the medicals were pretty bad on Flaherty.
Yeah, he's another guy I see, because he was unsigned, like him, Nick Pivetta, they're not getting a lot of love in drafts, so they're typically falling past ADP. If he's healthy, and this is it's a good landing spot for him. I mean, it's a good pitcher's park, good division. So I like it. What I believe, or from what I've seen or read, is that, listen, if everyone stays healthy, it might be Casey Mize, former first overall pick, who might get pushed out. But they're adding some depth, and I kind of like what they're doing here. Kind of like the Tigers this year.
I like a lot of their players. I like Parker Meadows a lot. Who doesn't like Riley Green? It's interesting though, like some of the guys that, they signed Gleyber Torres, which all of a sudden kind of makes like Torque a guy that is at risk for losing his job. Either he or Colt Keith. They're talking about moving Colt Keith to first base. I don't like that, by the way. But Gleyber is there, so Colt Keith or Torkelson, one of those two is kind of out of a job. I love Kerry Carpenter, by the way. He's like one of those guys. He's always like a guy I get. Oh, he can hit for average and power. Let's get some.
Yeah, he's a masher. It's a very interesting offense. Honestly, what I really want from this team is I just want Alex Cobb to stay healthy for one season, just pitch really well. That's what I want.
Do you like Jackson Jobe at all?
It's tough. I think he's going to get a shot in the rotation. I've been wavering. I've been, there have been times where like, oh, how do I not take him here? 290, 80 ADP. And then it's all a matter of, comparing against other players, but he's a top prospect, should get a shot in this rotation, but it gets just a little bit tougher now because he's just got to be nails in spring training. Cause there are a lot of guys here.
I like taking a chance on him in a DC, but you can only take so many risky picks. At some point you got to get some guys that, have the job, like pair him with a Jamison Tyon, obviously not in the same price, but okay, I've got this guy that I know is going to be solid, but probably not awesome, but I know he's got the job. Okay. I'll take a chance on Jackson Jobe here. See if I can go for some upside to go with it there.
Yeah. And part of it's like, like being careful to not compound risk, which is something that I just do. I don't know why. It's just sometimes the YOLO approach, but you look at my team with where my pitching staff started with DeGrom, Sasaki, someone, and then Strider. It's like, it sounds great on paper, but you just know it's not going to work out.
That could be like DC winner, or it could be 18th place in a 15-team league. I mean, it has both of those sort of outcomes there. Mm-hmm. Fill in the blank for me. Pete Alonso is going to sign with the...
I mean, if I want to be obnoxious, I'd say I don't care at this point. It's just so played out. I'm going to just say Seattle at this point.
Oh, please don't.
That's what I heard.
Don't.
I mean,
that's so painful. But Seattle's on that list of teams that's done nothing this year. I mean, oh wait, I'm sorry. They got Polanco back, Jorge Polanco back. They've done a lot this year. No, but they've done nothing. They're one of those teams that got affected by the TV fallout there. Mm-hmm. Twins, the Cardinals, the Padres, although they've got their own succession issue as well there. But there's some like competitive teams. I mean, it's a waste. The Mariners have this elite rotation, and they did jack to improve their offense there. It's so disappointing. So Alonso would make sense for that team, although I wouldn't wish it upon him because it's such a terrible place for right-handed power.
No, exactly. And then, I mean, it's you're right. They haven't done anything. The pitching staff is so amazing. Right now, a guy like Dylan Moore, who's going to hit you 200, is, in the starting lineup, not even as a platoon guy. And your first base options are, Luke Raley, who's a strong platoon guy, can also play in the outfield. And then it's guys like Austin Shenton. Remember him from the Rays? 37-year-old Donovan Solano, another signing. So it's, it kind of seems like a good fit, at least on paper. Yeah,
it does. We'll see if it happens there, but it does. But yeah, it's just, I think it's just so disappointing. Because these windows don't last forever. When these pitchers don't stay healthy forever, or drop off. I mean, we already started to see a little bit of drop off with Castillo. Brian Woo's great for the 13 outings you can count on. After that, I'm not sure. Dylan Cease, does he get traded?
I think so. I think a few guys there are getting traded. It's I have 0 in 30 teams. I have 0 Robert Suarez shares. I think he's one of the other guys to go. I'm scooping up all the Jason Adam and Estrada that I can.
I like it. I like it. I think you did get Estrada in our league. So I do remember that. It bums me out because the Padres have, their fans rewarded them. They sold out their stadium, record attendance numbers. But because they're like the heirs to Peter Seidler's estate are fighting over the team, and they lost their TV contract, they're like not doing anything this offseason. They were so close against the Dodgers last year, and if they beat the Dodgers, I think they beat the Mets too. And who knows? I think this was a team that was World Series worthy and came one game away from getting to the next series and beating the best team in baseball. But it didn't happen, and so we, now it seems like they're tearing apart, not building up.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it, it's like Tatis, Jackson Merrill, Manny Machado, Bogart's healthy. Like that's a very solid core. And we've just been staring at, projected rosters with Eggy Rosario on it for so long. I actually like Tirso Ornelas. I actually think he might be kind of sneaky in the underground communities of fantasy.
I know. I remember the hubbub about that in our draft. Brandon Lockridge is listed as the starting left fielder on the RotoWire depth charts right now. Tyler Wade is listed as making the team. Tyler Wade,
man.
And they have 4, and Joe Musgrove's out for the season too. And they're going to trade away Cease. It all becomes King, Darvish, Vasquez, and Matt Waldron. They don't have like a pitching prospect knocking down the door either. That's the other thing. It is not a deep system. They traded away all their prospects to try to win. And to try to turn that away, so it bums me out, even though I'm not even a Padres fan. But
I'm supposed to not like the Padres, and I feel bad for them.
They're a fun team. They're fun players. I love Jackson Merrill. I mean, I don't love Machado, but he's a good player. But the thing is, it was a fun team to watch, and now they're going to probably get move some pieces off there. Nolan Arenado. We haven't really talked Cardinals because they've added exactly 0 people so far. How interested are you in his eventual location?
It makes a difference. I mean, he has got his no trades, clauses and everything. He wants to kind of control where he lands. And I think he's got a little bit left. I have been off the Nolan Arenado drafting train for a few years now.
Same.
But at a price like kind of where he's going and like 220s, 250s and the right build, I don't mind it, especially when I am drafting sort of risky sometimes. And to me, it just feels like a solid 25, 85 guy. And that's good to have, some of those guys.
Yeah, I agree. It was 1671, so he needs a little bit of a dead cat bounce this year. But I'm kind of curious to see what the next step in the progression is. If it was really truly has he really truly bottomed out, or is there a bounce back there in him? We'll see about that. But honestly, the same question about Alex Bregman. How much do you care about where he lands?
He's one of those guys that he's just a really good real life hitter, and it translates to boring fantasy stats. But there are only few guys that have this walks to strikeout ratio that is just it's near even. The plate discipline, the batting eye, it's all excellent. If it's a big difference. If he's on the Red Sox, I'm much more interested. But of course, then the price goes up. I feel like people won't be as interested if, say, he lands on the Tigers. So it just depends. But I don't know. It all just kind of seems like he'll just end up back in Houston. That's what it kind of feels like. But I don't know. They're getting crowded too.
Yep. All right. Quickly, other noteworthy changes in baseball. You may not have noticed this, but the A's are playing. I know you have noticed this, Vlad, but the listener may have not noticed. The A's are playing in Sacramento. That's a big change from going away from Oakland to Sacramento. You would think, oh, well, it's just a little farther north and a little inland. It's like 15 degrees of temperature difference, maybe more. And you don't have the same foul ground. You have a better ballpark, even though if it doesn't rate high among PCL ballparks, it's an infinitely better place for the likes of Brent Rooker and some of those other good teammates to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. Getting some cheap A's is really not a bad strategy. Especially it's going to be very hot summers, talking like 100+ degrees there in Sacramento, and balls gonna be flying out of that park, and there are going to be some record numbers with some guys there. I'm interested in the Zach Geloffs of the world, like kind of the more affordable athletics. I think are very interesting. I mean, Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler. There's a lot to like about them, but both are they're fully priced. Pitchers, we usually don't touch the pitchers there. I really don't mind a Jeffrey Springs there. I think you just kind of pick and choose. You stream them. You're not gonna pitch him at home or at the Rockies or whatever it is. But I think there are a couple of good pitchers there as well.
I like a little Langoliers. I like a little Soderstrom, even though he's not a catcher anymore. Even a little JJ Bleday. Sprinkle him in there at the bottom of my drafts as well. I'm not sure what to make out of Jacob Wilson. Got hurt when he got promoted last year. Almost no power, but man, a sick hit tool.
Yeah, this is like one of the few guys that can, kind of like your next Arias in a way, because he's somebody that he's not going to hit you maybe the double-digit homers you want, or driving a lot of runs, but he's like a legit 315 hitter.
Yep, indeed. All right, the other ballpark change. The Rays, unfortunately, they lost Tropicana Field to the Hurricane. They're playing in Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. Similar, if not the same dimensions, supposed to mirror Yankee Stadium. What are you doing with your Tampa Bay Rays?
Getting as many of the lefties as I can. If your name is Lowe or Lau or anything in between, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I like it. I think you're right about that. Are you staying away from some of these fun Rays pitchers? McClanahan, Boz, Pepio, Bradley. Do you like Rasmussen? Are any of those scary to you because of where they're pitching?
I should be scared, but I've been just diving in head first because I love these arms. I love the Rays organization. We spend time, we can kind of figure out when we use them, right? I mean, of course, if you're drafting Pepio, you want to kind of start him every week. But I do think Shane Boz, a full season from him, I think he could be, kind of, next level.
Boz this year. Love Boz this year. I'm trying to get as many shares as I can. Yeah. I just, they know they're pitching. They know they're pitching. Give me a little Jonathan Aranda late in drafts. I think he's going to be someone that's pretty useful. Closer. Are you in on Fairbanks? Are you in on any of the alternatives?
So usually, everybody thinks that Fairbanks is going to be traded, and everything kind of points, he's going to be traded or he's going to be hurt. Those are really the mostly what happens. And now that David Bednar, the fact that he's now apparently trimmer, he's been moving up. People are a little bit back on the Alexis Diaz train, I've noticed, based on ADP. And then Ben Joyce has been pushed up. So a guy like Fairbanks does fall sometimes. And a healthy Fairbanks is really, really good. Maybe they don't trade him. So
okay,
I don't mind.
I don't mind him either. I even have like Mason Montgomery in a longtime keeper league, and he was sneaky good after being moved to the bullpen. But he's lefty, so that always gets held against him a little bit. And it's still, the Rays are going to raise it. And we know that if Fairbanks gets dealt, it won't be just one guy. That's the one thing. I like Uceta. I like Montgomery. I like Manny Rodriguez. I like them all, but that's the problem, as I like them all. And that's hard to pinpoint one guy.
Very good pen. Very good pen.
Yeah. Last thing to bring up, the O's are no longer going to be Baltimore. Maybe not entirely so. They're moving the left field fences in. Who are you adjusting accordingly?
I learned a lot from Sarah Sanchez, who's a friend of my pod, your pod, but she did a phenomenal 2-part in the FTN draft guide, a series on the changing park factors, and there's so much I got from there. One of the things that she had mentioned was how many home runs were lost in. Basically like about 200 home runs between 2018 to 2021 that wouldn't have been hit the next 3 years when the wall was moved. And then it went the exact opposite. It was like 150 or so. Anyways, it's just crazy. I think the one, to answer your question, it's some of those righties that have power that are maybe a little bit more affordable, like, Tyler O'Neill, if he's not horrible on the one side of the
targeted signing. Absolutely.
Could hit 40 bombs, and I like Ryan Mountcastle. I'm always going to be a Mountcastle guy.
Yeah, I give me some Jordan Westberg again too. He was very, very good to us last year. It's a shame he got hurt, but I think he repeats. I think he's a good player. I think
very
he'll
good
do
player.
Well. Yep,
I agree.
All right, we're going to end on a happy note instead of complaining. But Vlad, tell everybody where they can find you. You're doing a lot of great work in our industry.
Yeah, at RotoGut on the social medias outlets, and ftnfantasy.com. Draft guide, projections, rankings, everything. It's my love. I just love to do it. I'm immersed in it every single day, and going to kind of give you the best. And I wanted to I want to thank you, Jeff, for having me, and I just want to shout out our good friend Scott Genstad, who we've just known many years, and we love you, Scott, and we're always here for you.
Yep, and hopefully we'll get Scott back soon. But again, you were awesome for stepping in. You filled the big chair nicely there. Well done. If you like this podcast, smash that like button, please. Hit subscribe. Let you know when the next podcast is coming up. And check out our work at RotoWire, rotowire.com/pod. Check out Vlad's work over at FTN Fantasy. all sorts of good stuff. Just follow his Twitter feed and he'll point you in the right direction how to get access to that. But again, we really appreciate that. You listening, spending some time with us here tonight, if you're streaming live or listening wherever you get your podcasts. Can't wait for another season here in 2025. Thanks for joining us tonight. Take care.